Hi, it's Love84 Ari of OSNST Limited, and I just wanted to do a quick blog about the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain and colonialism during the times of the British Empire. Recently there was a report regarding racism in Britain, and it was clearly done by Uncle Ruckus's coons who just got colonial white supremacists shit on the tip of their noses. So fuck all that, forget all that bullshit. But I was just watching Ash Sagar, I think her name is Ash Sagar. She's an academic who talks about colonial history. I think she's from East London. I agree with quite a lot of what she said in her report regarding racism in Britain, except for the bit where she says she likes grime. Grime's crap, garage is better, UK garage is much better than grime, and that's a fact. Yeah, but I just wanted to talk about something that's on my mind. Now, I'm sure you've seen on the BBC many years ago the programme The Dragon's Den. So The Dragon's Den is a programme where you have multi-millionaires and budding entrepreneurs get 5 minutes or so to pitch their business idea to multi-millionaires who, if they like the idea, will pitch or invest in the business for a percentage of the company. So that's how it works in Dragon's Den. So that's how it works in America and Europe, anywhere really. If you've got an idea and you want to expand that idea, you pitch it to someone who's got the funding to take it further. So that's relatively how it works, and people will negotiate percentages of shares, 5%, 10%, 50%, 40%. So that's how the Dragon Dens work, and it's I love that program. When it used to be on, I used to watch it all the time. So I just want to take our minds back to the Dr. Robotnik Industrial Revolution of Great Britain. Now, during the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, Britain took a huge leap fast forward. Now, in those times, that was a game-changing time for humanity in general, just because things like the camera was invented, electricity and engineering ways to modify steel, iron. So completely, it was a game changer. So the way we traditionally talk about empire is the right-wing Zionist Rothschild empire, British Empire would say, oh, they civilized the savages. That's how basically they feel. They civilized the world. Where would the world be? They'll all be left behind in the Stone Ages or whatever ages, if it wasn't for what they believe the white race, the European race brought to the table. But if we were to take our minds back to the 18th century and just picture it in the form of a dragon's den. So imagine the dragon's den in the 18th century in the world and throughout the Commonwealth nations. The dragons are the Asians, India, Aboriginals from Australia, Africans, First Nations, Native Americans in Canada. So we are the dragons. Now, what do we as the dragons bring to the table? The wealth. We have the resources, we have the metals, we have the irons, we have the copper, we have the agriculture, we have a lot of wealth. Africa has a lot of diamonds and a lot of gold and a lot of resources. So that's what we as the coloured races, the dragons, bring to the table. Now imagine we all sitting there in the dragon's den with all this wealth piling up. Miners mined for hundreds of years to extract and mine the resources and minerals from the ground. And then the Europeans approach us. Now imagine a European brings to the table a locomotive engine, a train, and we stand in there and he shows us an example that this engine, this locomotive steam train, can pull carriages without an animal having to pull it by itself, just based on steam and an engine. How many dragons, if this idea was pitched to us, whether in Punjab, South India or anywhere else in Africa, if we are approached as human beings rather as second-class citizens of the planet based on the colour of our skin, and this idea was pitched to us, they're the inventors, they've got this idea, how many would raise their hand and want to invest? I would. If I had a dominion and had wealth, if I was a princely state or Rajasthan, Rajput, Punjab, I would say, I love this is an amazing invention. We would like to invest in this. We'd like to invest in the British company. This is very good. So the way you have to take it back is, though we're not happy with how the races went about it, Because what the racists of Rothschild Zionists did during the East India Company colonization of India, they went to South India, I think it's Chennai. They established the British East India Company. They had a tariff to sell goods from Asia around the world, and you had to pay them a fee because they controlled the seas. But then they eventually started paying gold pieces to sepoys, mercenaries in India, to turn on the indigenous authorities. So the indigenous mercenaries, the sepoys I think they were originally called, they would accept mercenary fees, and then they would start attacking indigenous authorities. So then they attacked the indigenous authorities in South India. They worked themselves up to Maharashtra, Bengal, up to North India, to the point when it finally came to the time where indigenous rebels, or not rebels, indigenous mercenaries were paid to attack the Sher Punjab company of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and eventually Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Sher Punjab fell. And I think it was in 1857, I think, after a few mutinies and things like that, that power from the East India Company, the British Zionist East India Company, was transferred to the Crown of Britain, to Queen Victoria, and this is when they self-proclaimed her to be the Empress of India. But you see how they worked. They would pay people within the country gold pieces to attack the indigenous authorities. That's how a tiny island like Britain was able to work themselves up and control a vast nation like India. And you've got to take your mind back to the times in India during that time. That was during the time of after the Islamic conquest, so it was a very fragile time, because India had been in a state of war since the 9th century, and now we're talking the 18th century, so it's been at war for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it was a very fragile time. So for someone to come in and seize power like that by paying indigenous mercenaries to attack the indigenous authorities, it's not going to be very difficult to eventually seize power of the whole nation. So that's how they went about it. But if we were approached, let's say, by a left-wing British Labour Party company, and we were to take our minds back, and the British Labour Party company approached us, and we're the dragons in Africa, the dragons in India, the dragons in Native America, and the British bring a locomotive and they place it and they take us to outside to show us how it works. Who would raise their hand and want to invest in the locomotive? I would. It's very good. And imagine they started pitching chemistry pioneering and biology and physics, and we think, this and certain way to do surgeries and things like that, and looking through microscopes at cells and things like that. This is very, very good. Many Maharajas from Rajasthan or Punjab would say, we would love to invest in this. This will be good for our children. This is a very excellent standard. We'll be impressed. So it's about how we were approached. If we were approached as human beings, many Maharajas from India or kings or queens from Africa would invest in the British Labour Party company. If we were approached as human beings, as dragons who have the wealth, we would invest in the British company who've got the inventions and the ideas. Now they say, well, without our ideas you'd be nothing. Yeah, but without the wealth invested from India or Africa in the Industrial Revolution of Britain, one locomotive engine will remain just one locomotive engine. So to have the resources and the metals for the rail tracks, to do the national railway, to make more engines, and now have 500 locomotive engines, well, that's from the investment of nations like India and the wealth of Africa. So we are shareholders in Great Britain as a coloured race, as the nations of India and Africa, and the resources of Aboriginal Australia and First Nations Canada. So when we're recognised as shareholders and we're told that we can't talk about our painful history and speak out how the right-wing racist Rothschild Zionist company, British East India Company went about it, and we're told to get over it, or then we'll just tell them get over World War II. Stop going on about the Jewish Holocaust, because we're talking about things that happened at the same era in 1940s, 1900s as when the Jewish Holocaust happened. But they will have a 2-minute silence for that, but tell us as Azad Hind Fauj devotees of Sebastian the Robust Netaji that we have to get over it. No, they can get over it as well. So, when migrants who came over here in the 1950s and 1960s were descendants of those migrants, and a lot of us are living in towns where our base funding for our schools and our hospitals and our GPs and our dentists isn't the same as other parts of Britain. But when you really look at the wealth that went into making Britain's one locomotive 500 locomotives, due to the investment of the wealth, really deserve a lot more and a lot more respect. So that's all I want to say. So that's Govlove 84 Ari of OSNST. Just, if it works like the Dragons Den, then we are dragons in this country. And if they say no, then if they're going to say get over it and they don't view it like that, then people can rob dragons. If you've got an idea, you want to get investment, go to the person, sell them a share of your company, but take the money and chip and fuck them. If that's how they want to do it, fuck it, that's how it works, isn't it?